All right, all right. Shalom and good afternoon to everyone. I want to first and foremost say peace to the listening audience. I want to give thanks and praise to the creator of heaven and earth. I want to thank everyone who's here in attendance and for those who will be watching later, even at home. Um, Today, this particular opportunity to have this particular sit down and interview for me is an immense high honor because I'm sitting with someone who is not simply regarded as a prestigious scholar in the community, but who, in fact, is a leader of many men in the community. It is my pleasure, it is my honor to introduce to the listening audience my good brother, my dear friend, Grand Sheikh Sharif Ana El Bey. Shalom to you, my brother.
Shalom, Aki. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
Yes,
I
sir.
want you to do something for us, essentially, if
Sure.
you can. There's always someone who, their introduction might be brand new to you. So
Right.
many people know who you are, but there's
Yes, sir.
always someone who doesn't. So if you
Right.
can give us just a brief description of who you are and
Sure.
and and how you came to where we're at today in terms of the interview, then I
Yes,
can
sir.
proceed with the rest of our dialogue.
Absolutely. Well, my name again is Brother Sharif Anail Bey. First and foremost, I'm your brother. You know, um, I have been a part of the Moorish movement since, you know, 1991. Summer of 1991 is when I got actively involved in the Moorish movement. I've been a member of the Moorish Science Temple of America Incorporated since 2012. I've prior to all of that, right? There's definitely a backstory. I did first and second grade in Muhammad's University of Islam, Mosque 27, Los Angeles, California. So I was, immersed, at an early age into the idea of um, religion and culture from a context that um, is outside of um, neocolonialism, you know what I'm saying, and reactive thinking of studies. That's what one of the things that makes the perspective of the Moorish Science Temple of America and the Hebrew Israelite community seem kind of weird and otherworldly is the fact that our perspective on these things is not reactive to
Hmm.
Euro-colonialist thinking. Even, shout out to our Afrocentric brothers and sisters, but a lot of what they stand on is actually reactive doctrine. You know what I mean? And because it's reactive, it's still in part defined by the oppressive doctrine. So, I came out of, I came to the teachings of Prophet Noble Drew Ali by way of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the Nation of Islam.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. That's an excellent introduction, my brother. And what I want to say is that if I can speak briefly about
Yes.
my introduction with you, from the very moment that I first came in contact with you, I said this is someone to learn from.
Mm,
Unfortunately, because of our time and era, the first time I came in contact with your teaching wasn't in person. I
right.
say unfortunately because a lot of us old heads don't really put too much respect on the YouTube scholarship, right? But
Facts, brother.
but I'm still thankful of the opportunity that I had the ability to first discover you in a video format where I can kind of connect with you maybe a little bit more intimately than a book would allow.
Right.
So I definitely respect that. So in watching you on video, I was immediately realizing that I was in the presence of someone who was first and foremost a man of high character. Sometimes when we open our mouth to give discourse, people forget their morale as they
Mm.
begin to build their portfolio before their audience. We have to be very careful as we are discoursing or dialoguing in the community about issues of conflict that we are diametrically opposed conceptually on various standpoints.
Yes, sir.
Never lose your morale during the process of those conversations.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Even
sir.
even I myself am a testimony to the fact that at times your human nature can get the best of you in some dialogues, right? Because we're still humans, as they say at the end of the day, right? But
Brother, I want to speak to that really quick, see, because, man, listen, you practice a religion. I practice a religion. And especially in today's conscious community, in today's conscious, the conscious realms, religion and religious tradition and faith traditions looked down upon as being oppressive or as being outmoded or as being fairy tale or whatever, right? And when you said when you brought up the issue of having the discipline to keep your morality,
mhm.
you know what I mean? Our people didn't fall because we lacked knowledge of ourselves. We fell with full knowledge of ourselves.
Mm.
See what I'm saying?
Yes,
We fell because we lost the relationship that binds us to love and unity.
I'm glad you said that, brother,
You know,
because the quote that you're saying, essentially, a lot of people trace back to the Bible. My people are destroyed for lack of
lack of
knowledge.
knowledge.
And I totally agree with you that we are not destroyed due to the lack of knowledge, because historically, when you look at our people, we are the gatekeepers of civilization. We are the originators. We are the fathers of civilization, as it were. So far be it that we are destroyed due to the lack of knowledge and information. So I would like to, if I can, give a little context just briefly behind that biblical statement.
Yes, sir.
From the biblical perspective, the word that's used to denote knowledge, it's denoting having an intimate experience with what you know and what you do. So that the sum total of knowledge from the Hebraic perspective is marrying what you know with what you do. And then watch this. There's a flip side to this story.
Yes.
The word knowledge in English is a compound word. The first part is to know. The word ledge is an old German word which means to act upon. So knowledge means to act upon what one knows. So why were we destroyed? Because at some point we stopped acting upon that which we knew.
We begin to think that knowledge is a collection of various disjointed pieces of information.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And what Prophet Noble Drew Ali taught, he said, for man to know, he must first be what he knows.
Yes. Now, because you brought up Prophet Noble Drew Ali.
Yes, sir.
I want to begin my questions there.
Yes,
so treat me as a complete novice when I say, for someone who is completely unaware of what the Moorish Science Temple is, I would like for you to familiarize us with the origins of the Moorish Science Temple, beginning first and foremost with the founder of the Moorish Science Temple.
Yes, sir. Before I want to first give praise to Allah, Almighty, Eternal, and Incomprehensible, but closer to you than your jugular vein.
Right.
And, in speaking on Prophet Noble Drew Ali, give honors to him, for a number of reasons, which I'm going to speak to. I'm going to give honors to my leader, Grand Sheikh and Moderator of the Moorish Science Temple of America Incorporated, Brother R. Jones Bay, and his assistant, Brother P. Chase Hill. I want to give honors to my brothers. See, we didn't do this by ourselves. I didn't do this by myself. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I work with a team of brothers.
That's powerful.
So I want to give honors to them. I want to give honors to Ali's men. And so that being said, the Moorish movement, and when we say movement, we're not talking about somebody speaking about nationality, somebody speaking about, what our people used to be called or what, where we came from. That's not what we mean by Moorish movement. I want to make that statement first and foremost, because, Blyden spoke about nationality. A number of people, Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey spoke about nationality.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's not what we mean by Moorish movement, right? What we mean by Moorish movement is actual restoration of a thing, right? The movement is to restore. I'll use the words like this. We're American citizens. But we are impaired. Our people in America are impaired American citizens because a primary component or prerequisite of the American ideal is to adopt the ideal that out of many nations, one nation can be made.
Okay.
That is the foundation American ideal. To qualify socially, to be recognized socially, you have to adopt the idea that out of many, one. E pluribus unum. Right? Out of many, one. It's the magnum opus on a social level. It's the great work on a social level. It's an alchemical process. But that being said, the prerequisite is you have to have an old world connection. You have to be able to say where you come from. See what I'm saying? So racism is not a foundational part of American society. It became a usurping factor into the original American fabric.
Okay.
Because the prerequisite is you have to have an old world connection. You see? And so what are we dealing with? We're dealing with national origin. That's what we're dealing with, national origin, right? So that is the one major thing that our people in America lack. And because there's that gap, the general idea is our history started with slavery. You see what I'm saying? Prior to that, our history is maybe a two or three word paragraph in your history books. Random Africans off the west coast of Africa, we snatched you up and poop out your head. Right? And so what Prophet Noble Drew Ali did, and I'm gonna give some other historical contextual background. 1912, a man named Deuce Muhammad Ali, right? He starts his magazine, Sudanese-born Egyptian citizen, educated in the West, in England. He starts a magazine called Africa Times and Orient Review. The key thing about Africa Times and Orient Review in the year 1912 is this. The magazine was dedicated to speaking out against European colonialism in African and Asian countries. Okay? It goes to print December 1912, the same year that the Treaty of Fez was signed. The Treaty of Fez is what allowed for Spanish and then French colonialism in Morocco. This was 1912. So it cannot be, when you put those things into the mix contextually, it's absolutely amazing that in 1913, a little man in Newark, New Jersey is teaching in a barbershop that you are not Negro, Black, colored, or Ethiopian. You are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. That's crazy. You see? So it's important to add that, you know this, you are an impeccable researcher. So I'm gonna return to this statement a couple times in this conversation, right? A lot of times we research ancient things with modern eyes.
Yes.
So we're out of context.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So we have to have a snapshot of the world in which the event or the things that we're researching, we have to have a snapshot of the world to have proper context. So that's why I wanted to add those two things. Treaty of Fez, that started French occupation in Morocco, 1912. Deuce Muhammad Ali starts his magazine to speak out against that, right? His magazine hosts as contributing editors a literal who's who of secret orderism. H.G. Wells, Edward Bulwer Lytton, who else? A number of them. Then these guys, Annie Besant, C.W. Ledbetter, a literal who's who in secret orderism. They're contributing editors. And of course, Marcus Garvey worked for his magazine as well. It gets really interesting when you look at it from a contextual perspective. And 1913, he's teaching in a barbershop, right? Now, even that is significant. 1913, he's teaching. Not only is he teaching in 1913, he's offering medicinal remedies. This is important because this later on became his business in the way that he supported himself and supported the movement in Chicago with the Moorish Manufacturing Company. In 1913, he's providing these remedies. What happened in 1919? The big Spanish flu pandemic.
That's right. That's right.
The big Spanish flu pandemic. So he was literally saving lives during that time as well. That's where the statement, the statement that he made, my remedies will save you or will cure you of anything you weren't born with.
I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So by 1916, the meetings got so big, right? And this was a man named James Dixon's barbershop, 181 Warren Street, Newark, New Jersey. By 1916, they ended up renting a space, 12th and Rutgers Street, right? And they rented a second-story spot over a saloon. And that was May 1st, 1916. And so then that was called Canaanite Temple. That location was called Canaanite Temple. And contrary to some other stories out there, the actual history is he and James Dixon worked together. James Dixon was his assistant. But there was an issue. James Dixon was cool with the prophet's teachings about our national origin. But James Dixon was Christian. Okay. He didn't agree with the prophet saying that we were Muslims. And so that caused a conflict. More people, sided with James Dixon. So by 1919, 1920, prophet moved on from there. And then later, go ahead, brother. Because I can give the bigger picture or more details, but go ahead.
Absolutely. Well, certainly the history of the Moorish Science Temple of America, to me at least, just from the little bit that I've studied over the years, is extremely extensive. If I can share a bit of personal history,
yes, sir.
My walk in the Hebrew Israelite way of life began in the year 1994.
Nice.
And I'm 41 now, but this coming year, 2021, God willing, I'll be 42. That lucky number 42, right?
There you go. That's right.
In the early 2000s, but beginning from 1998, I began to attend some Moorish meetings.
Yes.
In Bed-Stuy.
Yes, sir.
Years ago. And I learned a great deal among my Moorish brothers. One of the reasons why I began going there is because I knew a lot of Israelites that started going there. And I got the invite one day, and I went, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself so much that I attended more and more meetings. Eventually, I stopped attending, but I definitely want to share that part of my story. So saying that to say, I definitely have some experience among the Moorish community here in New York City. I have and always have a great deal of respect for our Moorish brothers. And many people don't like when I say this, but as a Hebrew, as an Israelite, I also identify as a Moor because I understand history.
Yes, sir.
So because I also understand history, and more importantly, because I also understand nationality, I can understand those concepts that are spoken of when we speak about being a Moor or being Moorish, at least from a nationality perspective.
Yes, sir.
So I want to ask you this question.
Sure.
When we talk about the genesis of a movement, we should truly begin with the origin story.
Absolutely.
So what most people know who are somewhat familiar with Moors is that although the Moorish Science Temple of America, keyword of America, has its inception in the 20th century, most Moors know the history goes back much further. I want
Yes.
you to take our listening audience back to the earliest historical period where we can speak of Moors as a society, as a people, or as a nationality. I want you to
Big.
carve that out for us.
That's big, brother. See, one of the things that, there's so many, you know what's happened to us, that's damaged our people, that runs concurrent with the identity crisis,
Hmm.
you know, is a concurrent mode of education that lacks the proper nuance. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And so what we're really dealing with here, when we're talking about the Moors in history, is the progression from the earliest times of a people from an ethnic group up until the initiators of a world power. So we're talking about going from an ethnic group earlier to later a political entity. Having
Okay.
a political presence in the um, uh, families of nations,
Okay.
right? And so, I mean, man, we can go back. I mean, even before this, but let's start with Strabo, first century, right?
Okay. Okay.
So you got Strabo, first century, writing about the Mauritanians, right? And because of our you know Europeanized education, right? Because of our Europeanized education, because Strabo said Mari, right, or recorded Mari, that means that, oh well, the Greeks named them. That's not that that's a European. That's a European name. No, Strabo in his writings said that that's the name that they called themselves, the Mori.
Okay. Okay.
See what I'm saying? He recorded what they called themselves. That term later was adopted into Latin and into Greek,
Okay.
and they
Okay.
took the meaning that's descriptive of something other than themselves.
If I can interject for one moment,
Sure,
I
sure,
want to make it
sure.
clear to the listening audience from what our brother Sharif Bey essentially is saying, the
Yes,
term Moor goes back further than its Latin usage, where some
thank you.
people say it reflects color. What most people must remember in the ancient world, no one identified themselves nationality wise by a color.
No,
A color does not give us nationality at
right,
all.
right.
Um, your color cannot differentiate you from other ethnic families,
There you
especially
go.
when we talk about the first world per se, who would have obviously been the same color.
That's
So,
right.
how would calling myself black differentiate me from my Kemetic brothers,
There you go.
my brothers of Cush, my
Right.
brothers in Mesopotamia, my brothers in Canaan land? How would the color differentiate me? Because remember, part of nationality is to differentiate as well, or delineate and highlight.
There you go.
So
There you
I
go.
thank you for pointing out that point.
That's so huge, brother. It's. I mean, to give a very very simple analogy. In my kung fu school, my students call me Sifu. My son doesn't call me Sifu. You see what I'm saying? My son calls me dad, but my kung fu students don't call me dad. I'm
Hmm.
called something different on the street, maybe. In this other neighborhood, I'm called something entirely different. So even identification is contextual.
Okay,
You know what I'm saying? Even identification is contextual, people.
that's right.
It's always been that way.
That's right.
You
It's
know, and
always been
so
that way.
yes, sir. And so that's something that we have to keep in mind. We can't look at ancient times with modern eyes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want you to also describe for us those periods of history that people are familiar with. Before we begin to talk about the great Moorish Empire
Yes.
of the Portuguese and Spaniard
Right.
expansion and time
Right.
periods and Morocco time period,
Yes.
I want to talk about the connection between the Moorish nationality and the Canaanite people. For some in the community who don't really know anything about the history of Moors, when they learn about such a connection, obviously there's a lot of questions that arise. So I want to familiarize us, those of us who are new to that idea. What is the connection between the ancient Moabite people and the Moors?
Oh man, so this is I love a lot of your own research on regarding this. When you were preparing for debates, and I have to put those in air quotes, when you were preparing for debates with some of the people in the Kemetic community, you had mentioned to me personally. You said, "Listen, man, this is so rewarding. Not because I'm getting up, I'm putting ammo in my ammo box for the debates, but I'm learning some things. I'm learning. Oh my goodness, I'm learning things, right? And it were things that tended to unify us way more than put us at odds. You know what I mean? And so for instance, and you already know there's cutting edge scholarship that backs this up solidly. Our brothers in West Africa, in present day Nigeria, a number of the ethnic groups in those areas openly state that they are descendants of Canaanites and part of many migrations that went both ways over thousands of years. And so what that does is that it knocks a big hole in the Eurocentric Orientalist revisionist histories that our people, you and I, are only and can only be related to sub-Saharan Africans and not Afro-Asiatic people.
Yes, sir.
They tried to separate with the Hamitic hypothesis, Afro-Asiatic people as if they're not us.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So the West Africans in Northwest and Southwest Africa can't be Afro-Asiatic, right? Even though they themselves say, oh, no, we're descendants of Canaanites. You see? And so, of course, there's between us, right? Israelites and Canaanites, or Israelites and Moabites, right? Man, two branches on the same tree. Two branches on the same tree. And so the ancient Canaanites, here we go. Let's start like this. You practice a religious tradition, and I practice a religious tradition. Because, like I mentioned before, the conscious community, will try to discount anything we say as being scholarly, because that's religious stuff. That's phony. That's okay. Page 3 of the Moorish Science, the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Noble Drew Ali talks about the industrious acts of the Muslims of Northwest and Southwest Africa. He says they are the Moabites, Hamathites, and Canaanites who sojourned from the land of Canaan. Who were driven out of the land of Canaan by Joshua and received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit that part of Egypt. In later years, they formed themselves kingdoms. These kingdoms, these days, are called Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, Tripoli, etc. Right?
Okay.
Now, I already know what you're thinking because of your extensive research.
Yes.
But as soon as you say Joshua, a lot of the Afrocentrics will say, you're talking about some Bible stuff. That can't be true.
Right.
They know nothing about the Armada letters from the 18th century, from Egyptian government officials corresponding with surrounding kingdoms. And that is recorded. That exodus of Canaanites and Moabites is recorded in the Armada letters, to the point where they even mention,
yes, absolutely,
they mention Joshua, the son of Nun, of the Habiru. They mention it in the letters.
Yes. I always say to people, when it comes to the Exodus,
yes, sir,
there's no question whether or not there was an Asiatic Exodus in ancient Kemet. What the question is what period in ancient Egyptian history do we speak about the Exodus? Because there is no doubt that there is an Asiatic Exodus. History attests to the Exodus of the Hyksos, the Hekasut, the Shepherd Kings, an Asiatic who actually not only set up shop in Kemet as an organized nation state, but actually rule in ancient Kemet. And they rule in what a lot of people, when we speak of Kemetic tradition, history, nationality, and heritage, a lot of people get it twisted. And what I mean by get it twisted is a lot of people don't know that the region of Kemet, which is known as Lower Kemet or Lower Egypt, as we know, that's the highest portion of the land. That's the portion of the land directly adjacent to Canaan. Then the region of Kemet known as Upper Kemet is below that
in the south
region. But here's what I want to say. The name Kemet originates in originally descriptive of Lower Egypt. That name Kemet is originally descriptive of Lower Egypt. It then came to describe all of ancient Kemet, but not originally. The fertile soil, the fertile land, the black land, so to speak, Kemet or Ham, that was regarded as the rich, illustrious land that the Asiatics predominantly always inhabited. People forget, brother. Amir, excuse me for one moment. Amir, go get my bag in the closet. I want to show the class something. Get my brown bag. People forget that when we talk about the Narmer palette, who were the people Narmer had to fight in order to unite ancient Kemet? We're gonna bring it out. Bring out the other brown bag. Hurry up. We're gonna talk about all that right now, brother, because I have a real.
I saw you mention some when you brought some of this out before, man. It ruffled some feathers, bro.
You know, there was something that you said. Keep looking, Amir. There was something that you said earlier, and I mean earlier in our personal dialogue.
Yes, sir.
Where you said, "I can't understand why it is that people in the conscious community have a hard time understanding that ancient Kemet had a God concept. I mean, they have a priesthood. How do you have a priesthood without a God concept?" Give me one moment. I'll be right back. One moment.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But if you can, just please continue to speak to the topic for the audience. I'll be back in 1 second.
Absolutely. So the Armada letters, right? For those of you if you haven't Googled, see this is like the Matrix now. With as far as information, man, information's literally at your fingertips. You pick up your smartphone, right, and Google Armada letters, and it pops up. You get this information. 18th dynasty Egyptian correspondent, between Egyptian administration representatives in Canaan and some of the other surrounding kingdoms, and in particular, to our point, it's, it has the record of Canaanite and Moabite refugees asking permission to settle in Northwest Africa and lands west of Egypt land. And here's the other thing about, brother, the Armada letters, it was talking about, Egyptian rulers corresponding, right, with surrounding kingdoms, but it was written in Akkadian cuneiform.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was, which, by the way, was the lingua franca of the era. And that's why it was written in cuneiform. Right, and that speaks to the conversation of whether or not all languages stem ultimately from the Medu Neter. If the Medu Neter is the basis of all language, then that means the Medu Neter would have been the lingua franca of the ancient world, seeing that people say everyone gets their language from them. But it's a known fact. The lingua franca of the ancient world was utilized with the text known as cuneiform. Most people had access, and most messages in the ancient world were globally diffuse, utilizing that particular writing system, cuneiform. So that kind of speaks to, the question of language. But what I want to ask is this question.
Yes.
Who did Narmer actually have to defeat when he united ancient Kemet? Because the people highlighted on Narmer palette that he's defeating are typically described and descriptive of Asiatic people.
Yes, sir.
Long hair with beards.
That's right.
It's descriptive of Asiatics. So Asiatics been in ancient Kemet since even before Dynasty 0.
There you go.
Before the pharaohs, pre-pharaonic civilization.
Pre-Pharaonic.
Asiatics
Right.
always been in what's called Lower Egypt, right? Which is the uppermost part of
North.
Egypt. That region was ruled by Asiatics long before Ethiopians came from the south
There you
to
go.
unite it. Asiatics been there.
That's
People
a
don't
fact.
like to talk about that, but I have you here, so I said I gotta mention this.
That's so deep because as you've run into this before as well. First of all, we stand on the shoulders of giants. The scholars that came before us, brother. A lot of these scholars did amazing work, man. Salute to Dr. Ben, man. Oh my goodness. But hey, we're all susceptible to error.
Yes.
And what even you and I'm sure you said this before, it's exciting when somebody comes after you and points out something that you missed and said, hey,
Yes.
that's exciting. You know what I'm saying?
That's how we get sharp.
Yes, sir. So even Dr. Ben, to a degree, was relying on old Eurocentric norms when it comes to sociology and anthropology, specifically with regard to the Hyksos.
That's right. Absolutely. Let me ask you this question, brother.
Yes, sir.
So we understand that we can find Moors in the ancient world. We have historical attestations that we can find. We actually know that they're in ancient Kemet at a certain junction in time. We know that they're in the Canaan land, recognized as Moabites as one time. Here's my question that I'm sure is a burning question for a lot of people as well. Sure. What would have been the religion of the Moors? I want to start with the ancient world and then let's say now, because perhaps it evolved into something different today. So I want you to begin with, take us to the genesis of spirituality with Moors.
Absolutely. I mean, for the most part, for what we know, is it wasn't what we would call Islam today, but I have to qualify that. I'm gonna say why in a second, right? From the complexion perspective, you're talking about gods like Chemosh, and the religious tradition looked very, very, man, let's just call it what it is. The religious complexion between Israel and Moab was very, 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 very close, including animal sacrifice, it was very, very, very close.
If I could suggest this, let me say this.
Sure.
And this is me speaking objectively.
Yes.
What if the Bible captures the religious views of Moab in a period where they are worshiping under a system that's not really reflective of their origins? Correct. And what I mean by that is this. If you chart the children of Israel's history of spirituality or religious views, let's say, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
If you catch us at a certain time, it might look like we're worshiping the gods of Egypt. If you catch us at a certain time, even especially now, we are into Christianity. So what I'm suggesting is, and this is for the sake of bringing objectivity to the conversation, right?
Right.
What the Bible captures the people of Moab at a time period where they're not worshiping in the spiritual system of their ancestors. So as to tell my Hebrew brothers and sisters, it's highly possible and probable that our spiritual views may have originally been one and the same. Because again, if you capture Israel at a certain junction in time, you can clearly see that we are worshiping gods other than that which our ancestors gave us. So what we have to understand is when the Bible begins to introduce the people of Moab into the narrative, it is capturing them at a particular time in their period. And you have to ask yourself, is this their spiritual view world over, or are we capturing them at a particular moment in
time? My brother, first, I can't agree with you more on that. I can't agree with you more. And that also we begin to see from that lens, we begin to see, in a sense, whose side God is on. You see, at a particular point in time. You know, who does God rock for? You know what I'm saying? Depending on what the people are doing at that particular time.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
very important. I think that Israelites really come out of the dogmatic Western traditional view of Afrocentric learning and history and the darker nations of the world. Most of our knowledge of those peoples comes from a Western perspective or spectacles looking into the history of the darker peoples of the ancient world. And
correct.
that is bad because we
Yes,
need to put on the same spectacle and lens as the original darker peoples of the ancient world if we're to understand our ancestral conception when it regards our history, our spirituality, etc., etc.
okay.
I
That's big,
couldn't
brother.
appreciate this conversation
Brother, that's so
even
big what
more,
you
brother.
just said. You know, a lot of times when us coming into consciousness, we think
Yes,
having brown skin is enough.
yes.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we think having brown skin is enough, right? But you hit it right on the nose. We don't want to face, and this is all of us to a degree, lesser, greater, or lesser degree. We don't really want to face how much of the European psychology is still in our heads right now.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
we're like you just said, we're dependent on the cowboys to teach us about the Indians.
Mm,
You know what I'm saying? That's what we're doing still, in many respects, to the point where when the Indians start to speak for themselves, you turn your nose up like, I don't know about
mhm.
that.
That's a fact.
Yeah, that's what we do. You know, that's what we do. I won't say, I won't, I had, yeah, as an example, I had a conversation with another esteemed brother, and we were talking about Mansa Musa's relative, Abu Bakari II,
Mm,
and how Abu Bakari II, it is written and recorded in their national archives, still to this day in Mali, in present day Mali, about the not one, but two expeditions to America that Abu Bakari made. Two of them, right? And the brother, in his attempt to disagree, said this. He said that it's not possible that that could have even happened, right? He said all they had at that time was the technology to build riverboats out of tree trunks.
mm, mm,
Now we're talking about Mansa Musa's relative, right?
mm. And we all know his legacy.
Come on,
And we
right?
all know his legacy.
But the Malians, this is a part of Malian history.
Hmm.
It's taught in universities over there. You know what I'm saying? So when the Indians start talking, we want to turn our nose up.
Hmm.
But when the oppressor tells you, it's like, oh, okay, we got Patty Hearst syndrome.
Okay. Okay. So where we're at in our conversation right now is so we've talked about the Moors in ancient history, and
Yes, sir.
we're bringing it up eventually to as close as we can get to present day, but
Yes,
we
sir.
can't skip what we call or what is sometimes called the illustrious period, and that
Yes,
would
sir.
be the period from what I want to say is about the 8th century Common Era till about the 15th century Common Era, the
That's fact.
glorious age of
Fact.
the Moors.
That's
Let's
the
talk
golden age.
about the golden age of the Moors, as it were. And if you
Sure.
can, I would like you to speak to our brother and scholar who's no longer with us. May his memory be blessed. Can you also, if you can, draw from Ivan Van Sertima's work?
Ooh,
Because he
man.
produced some great work on the golden age of the Moors.
Listen, his words. Salute to that brother, man. One of the things that he brought out, also to our late brother and giant George G.M. James brought out,
Yes.
was that the golden age of the Moors could not have happened without the inherited brilliance and brainchild that they inherited from their brothers coming out of Egypt after
Mhm.
the Alexandrian conquest.
That's right.
Those brothers went further west and joined family that was already there. So that's why Noble Drew Ali said in later years, you got in one period of time, 18th century or 18th dynasty, a group of our people asking permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle northwest. Then later, when Egypt falls to Alexander, those same people now join the very people that they gave permission to prior.
Yes.
And what do you have? The golden age of the Moors. You have those people. Now, ethnically speaking, you've got Berbers, you've got, you know what you got? I'm just gonna say it. What you got is the true Arabs.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? You got true Arabs, you got true Hebrews. That's what you got. You got true Arabs, you got true Hebrews. And I'm speaking from an ethnic perspective because, truthfully speaking, the term Arab is a language group. It's not a race.
That's right. And even they know that.
Race.
Even they know that. Right.
Right. It's a language group. It's an Afro-Asiatic language group.
That's right.
See?
That's right. A lot of people don't know, if I can add some substance.
Please. Yes, sir.
The term Arab in both Arabic and Hebrew is Arab, and it means mixed. And it denotes a period of time where the original Ishmaelites, or descendants of Ishmael, become mixed with the various peoples who are colonizing their region. Hence why we see sometimes Arabs as bleached, bleach white in complexion, so to speak, for lack of a better term, in terms of skin color. Arabs sometimes, depending upon what part of the Arab world you're in, some Arabs look just like Europeans. But it's when Alexander the Great's influence and colonialism begins to touch those regions that you begin to have mass mixing, because Alexander was so fond of the darker culture of the ancient world that he made sure to plant not just intellectual seeds in these environments, but physical seeds. He wanted to build a super nation. So he pushed for the mixing, which unfortunately initially came from the raping. Many of his soldiers raped and pillaged our mothers in our lands, right? And that produced a hybrid type of look among many of the peoples of those regions, which is why when you go to the places, quote unquote, misnomered the Middle East, you're going to see a great variation of dark to very light.
That's right,
which,
brother.
by the way, is how we also come.
Yes, sir.
Even though you don't really find too many of us looking European white, so to speak.
There you go.
But you will find us with the same, different variations. So the point is that came from mixing, and that would be the origin of the term Arab.
Even in the modern day, I'm sure you're familiar. Other people you can go on YouTube right now and you can Google the name, or you can search the name Mustafa Hefni, our brother Mustafa Hefni, right? And Mustafa Hefni, when he first immigrated to the United States, he came from Egypt. He was an Egyptian citizen, ethnically Arab. He came here and he said, "Oh, I look just like these black people. So that's what I am." Immigration and naturalization told him, "Nope, you're white.
Amen. You're
white." And here we classify all Arabs as white, even though he looked just like you and I.
Oh, yes. Yes, sir.
I don't know if you all can see my screen. Can you see the screen?
Let me see if I can have you share your screen. Yes, you can. Let me put it to share screen right now so you can see your screen. Okay. Hopefully that should do it. Yes, brother. Go ahead.
You can see it?
Yep. Everyone can see it.
Beautiful. So this is an old slide that I did for an older presentation. But what you have right there, in picture wise, original Arabians versus what is called al-Mustariba, which is Arabized Arabians. What we see today and what we know today as Arabs, or what we count today as Arabs, are Arabized Arabians, not the true Arabians. This is the truth.
I believe you. That's right.
And so just like what you said about just man, this whole thing, the whole Euro-colonialist ideal and the whole white supremacy thing it was a global effort.
Yes.
This is a global effort. The phenotypical Arabian, as late as 200 years ago, was as dark as you and I.
Yes, sir.
And that's just the fact. That an individual, one of those individuals, just like Mustafa Hefni of today, if you were walking the streets of America, they'd call him a black man.
That's a fact.
And that's just a fact. But again, as you also pointed out, the terms that we use to describe people socially based on color code were not used in those times.
That's a fact.
They weren't used. So that's important. That's important as well. As a matter of fact, even in Arabic, in the Arabic writings, when they talk about social norms of describing people's complexion, one of the colors was white. But guess what that meant? White meant you had a clear complexion with no blemishes. You were still dark skinned.
Yes,
that's what it meant.
Yes, sir. Yes,
but we read it today and we're like, oh, Muhammad was a white man. See? That's what happens. So, because again, it's bad or poor scholarship on our part. You know what I mean?
I totally agree with you. If I can draw from ancient history, if we were to look at, and I might have it before me, let me see. If we were to look at the papyrus of Annie, in one of the sceneries, Annie's wife is depicted as very, very light or white. But that did not designate her as a white woman. It designated her as being spiritually pure. So the color white in the ancient world was not descriptive of, the color of skin. Colorism or skin colorism is a thing of the modern world. In the ancient world, when people spoke about white meant spiritual purity.
There you go, brother.
Black represented the unknown and the mysterious. So black typically represented the recondite areas of the universe, consciousness, and the Godhead.
Yes, sir.
Which ultimately will bring us to talk about that black fez in a moment.
Yes, sir. Right? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. See, this is such a powerful conversation, bro. Oh my goodness, man. That very point, if you remember in 2016 with the debate I had with our brother Reggie, that very point irritated it irritated our brother Shaka Atmos, in the worst way. Yes, where I cited an Egyptologist who spoke on the use of color symbology in ancient Egypt. And she said exactly what you just said.
That's
exactly. Right. And, and what it forced them to do was bump their head. Their Afrocentric thinking had to bump their head with the reality of Egyptian symbolism.
That's right. That's right. Our illustrious thinkers of the past, our John Henry Clarks, our Dr. Benz, our Sheikh Anti-Geop, the fight that they had was a different fight that we fight today.
This is true.
The things that we fight against today are diametrically opposed to some of the areas that they had to, oppose and get into opposition with. So, we had to fight just to agree that, quote unquote, Black Africa was really black.
How about that?
Whereas today, you and I fight to show that what is regarded as Asia was originally of a darker hue.
Right.
That's our fight. But their fight was to prove the obvious. The continent of Africa was dark.
Correct.
So because our fights were different, the focus was different.
Yes.
Right? And because the focus is different, it led them to focus on areas that may have, put them in an intellectual corner that may at times have gone against the raw truth, because here is the raw truth, right? Yeah. I have a number of dictionaries when it comes to the Medu Neter available. We can literally pick any, right? I'm gonna pull out a couple. And in going through the Medu Neter dictionaries, one of the things you'll realize is that the term black in the Medu Neter, when it comes to Kemet, was never descriptive of the peoples of ancient Kemet. The term black, as it applies to Kemet, always applied to the features of the land. So it's talking about the illustrious soil, the rich, dark soil. And that is what made Kemet, what is called the gift of the Nile.
Right.
In the eye view of the historians. It's due to the fact that the land was so bountifully, minerally, and resource rich due to the thick alluvial black silt deposit annually as the Nile will inundate and flood. That's what made Kemet as a topographical feature so powerful in the ancient world. Kemet becomes the breadbasket of the ancient world, not because of their black skin, but because of the black land.
Right.
And the people of Kemet call themselves the Remesh.
The Remesh.
The Remesh. They did not self-identify as Kemet until after the reign of Mentuhotep. Our great brother, Grandmaster Teacher Mfudiji speaks on this. Recently revisited in some of the conscious community debates where some of our brothers in the conscious community spoke towards these things. So we know for a fact where we can find the term Kemet denoting the people, and it's not the original name. The term Kemet is really in reference to the people. It's a geopolitical term. It is a term descriptive of the color of the people's skin. It's a geopolitical term denoting the spirit of the people renewing their covenant, as it were, renewing their stance on being protective of this land.
Yes, sir.
When Mentuhotep drove out and all of the foreigners and reunited Kemet, now we see the name Kemet descriptive of the people for the first time. Why? Because it's used as a geopolitical term of endearment, but never as a nationality term originally.
There you go.
That's what people need to talk about.
That's powerful right there. That's why you taught me something. I mean, I'd heard the name Remesh, but I wasn't familiar with the fact that came before the use of Kemetu, right?
Yes, absolutely. The term Remesh goes back to the Old Kingdom, and you can find Kemet in the Old Kingdom, but it's never descriptive of people, ever. You only find it descriptive of people after the reign of Mentuhotep, which is the Middle Kingdom. So one of the things that you said that is so accurate is that in debating, if you're an honest debater and an honest scholar, and if you're genuine in your pursuit of truth, you're going to be studying. So debating helped to sharpen all of us.
That's a fact.
Most of us who come from strong spiritual-based systems, we actually went into our debates with the idea that if we encounter information that's so powerful that it can revolutionize our way of thinking, then we're going to change with it. And that's a fact. Most people are unwilling to change with the new information they encounter, simply because it may contradict the information that they're holding, to which we'd have to ask the obvious question now: are you really truly in pursuit of truth?
There you go, brother. Again, we count a win as two different things. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
A win for me is elevating the consciousness of myself and our people. That's a win. So a win in this respect is bigger than me. If you can teach me something, or if you can correct me, we have a saying in the Holy Quran of Moorish Science of America: teach it to the ignorant for their instruction, teach it to the wise, or communicate it to the ignorant for their instruction, communicate it to the wise for your own improvement. Say it again.
Your sound went out.
It went out. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Yes.
Okay, for some reason I can't hear you. I'm not sure why that is. Let me check mine really quick. Family, can you hear me? Give us a thumbs up, family, if you can hear me. Thumbs up if you can hear me. Not sure why I can't hear my brother.
Can you hear me now?
Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. I'm not sure why I can't hear you. So let's switch to earphones. Amir, give me that earphone.
Yeah, I
Amir,
can hear you. I guess I can hear you.
for some reason I can't hear you. So let me just switch out
Okay.
my.
How about now? Can you hear me?
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
All right, I can definitely hear you now. I apologize for that,
Oh, no
family.
worries.
I
No
apologize
worries.
for that. I'm going to ask the family, if you're enjoying this bill, thumb up the video, share it, put it on
Please.
your Facebook, your Instagram, share it. Let the people come in. Knowledge is about to get dropped. We have a very powerful brother here. The brother is an amazing scholar. I always say to really, really be a good scholar, genuinely, you should have some morale to yourself. And the brother is definitely a man of high morale and character. And this is definitely your interview. I don't want to speak too much. So the next question I want to ask you, brother Sharif, is this:
Yes,
um,
sir.
if we can now talk about um, some of what you know to be the origins of Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish
Okay.
Science Temple, could we go into that briefly?
Sure. There's been a number, like for the longest time in terms of research, scholarly research. First of all, there's a scarcity of it regarding the Moorish Science Temple of America, right? A lot of people were still dependent upon C. Eric Lincoln's work, right? And a lot of his references were verbal communications made by older members, right? So they were hardly scholarly. That being said, there's been a renewed interest with certain scholars, religious scholars, on the origins of the Moorish Science Temple of America. But they've also been stymied by limited access to reliable scholarly information about the organization. So they ended up relying on older, not so accurate information, and honestly, just a ton of speculation, right? There's one in particular saying that Abdul Hamid Suleiman was the actual founder of Canaanite Temple and not Noble Drew Ali. That started with an individual who's an esteemed scholar out of Colorado by the name of Patrick Bowen. Patrick Bowen wrote a paper. The paper was very detailed and very informational about Abdul Hamid Suleiman. But what he was trying to put forth was that Abdul Hamid Suleiman started Canaanite Temple and not Noble Drew Ali.
Okay.
So that flew like wildfire because, again, just like with your community, brother, there's a whole bunch of people that are actively always looking for a way to knock you down a peg.
Yes.
You know, they're there for a way to knock you down. So people are always looking for something that they feel like they can throw at the Moorish Science Temple of America. So they said, it was Abdul Hamid Suleiman. Suleiman taught Noble Drew Ali. They took it way left. Well, we wrote a piece rebutting Patrick Bowen's information. And it was based largely on an interview done by the CLSL, former Grand Sheik of Temple Number 10, Newark, New Jersey, but it was done on a man named Robert Walker. Robert Walker was the last surviving member of Canaanite Temple. This interview was done in the 80s. We happen to have the complete interview.
You're talking about the esteemed author Robert Walker?
No, not him. We're talking about another man, Robert Walker. His name was Robert Walker. He was an old man. Temple Number 10, Newark, New Jersey, used to do these events where they put people on the bus, members on the bus, and they would do this particular event. And there would be this old man that would always come. He'd always come to the events. And so he never really talked to anybody. Nobody ever really knew who he was. So at one particular point in time, Brother C.L.S. Ill is told by one of his members, listen, that old man that comes, he wants to speak to you. He wants to speak to you. And so he said, well, where is he? Well, he's got terminal cancer. He's in the hospital. And so he went to go see the man. And the man said, told him who he was. And he goes, yeah, well, I'm the last surviving member. I used to be a member of Canaanite Temple. So that started the interview, and he cleared up a ton of things. One of them is Patrick Bowen could only put, you know what? It was not Robert Walker, James Walker.
Okay.
That was his name, not Robert Walker, my bad. James Walker was the man's name. So Patrick Bowen in his research put Abdul Hamid Suleiman in Newark, New Jersey, no earlier than 1921. Well, we know that Noble Drew Ali had left Canaanite Temple in 1919.
That's right.
Further, there was no incorporation paperwork for Canaanite Temple until 1924. Canaanite Temple was the name of the location they met at, not the name of the organization.
Okay.
See? It was the name of the actual physical location. Okay. Like Temple Bethel or like Mosque Mariam. You see? That's what it was. It wasn't the name of the organization. The name of the organization or the name of the movement at that time was the Moorish Divine and National Movement in North America.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about Mordecai Herman, the brother who is pictured in 1927, some say, or as early as 1923, some say? He's pictured with a temple that says the Moorish Zionist temple of Jews, right? The Moorish Zionist
of the Moorish Hebrews.
The Moorish Hebrews, right? Could you speak a little bit about him and his organization and how, bring us up to speed? And I know you spoke on it briefly earlier, but show us a little bit more of that connection, because we know for a fact in contemporary history, we have Israelites that are identifying as Moors as well.
Absolutely.
We have our brothers who are called the Brooklyn Moors, and a lot of them, they wear fringes.
Yes, sir.
And I've spoke among them. I've spoke at their Sunday meeting before.
Yes, sir.
Great respect to Grand Sheikh Yusuf Bey for giving me such a high honor. So I've been among them. They were your security detail, brother, if I'm not mistaken.
Let me tell you something. And going back to how we started this conversation. Yeah, those brothers and us have had some knockdown, drag out wars. Just scholarly speaking.
Right.
And I mean, knockdown, drag out.
Right.
And so when we showed up, I remember when I was walking getting ready to go into the building, we turned the corner and there they are standing there at attention, man, like soldiers. I'm like, wow. They said, brother, we're going to be your security if you would allow us. I said, hold on. You all are leaders in your temple. You're officials in your temple. You come up with us and sit with us as leaders. They said, no, brother, we're going to be here to secure you. Yo, brother, it was so hard not to squirt a tear right there. I'm like, I said, listen, I don't care we could disagree about 99 things out of 100. Yo, listen, can't nobody say nothing negative about y'all to me, ever.
Ever.
Y'all are my brothers for life. You know what I'm saying? But that being said, going back to the Moorish Zionist temple thing, right? And again, I'm being transparent. You're my brother, right? Being transparent, right? A lot of times we want to claim things that we really can't lay claim to.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? I'm just keeping it a buck.
Okay.
Right? You have people that will turn a speculation into some sort of real evidence trail that somehow transformed into a fact, over the course of a week. Fact of the matter is this. Here's the fact of the matter. The term Moorish, as it relates to our people, is not something that Noble Drew Ali invented. It's not something, watch this, it's not something that he specifically introduced. It's not. This is just the truth. You see what I'm saying? We can find the term Moorish American and Moorish America used as early as 1913 and spoken of in newspapers in America. And that's just the truth. What makes Prophet Noble Drew Ali significant is that he just didn't say, hey, by the way, you guys are descendants of Africans born in America. No, the movement is designed to restore that identity and then make it known in American society to reestablish, in a very real sense, your old world connection. That's what it was. It wasn't just to throw some information out there. Right. You see? But, you know, the significance about, but see, to that point, watch me, to that point, pointing that out doesn't discredit or diminish the work of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. It actually enhances it. It enhances it. It's like, wait, oh, there, man, if you had Hebrew brothers from, you know, what is it, the WPA report out of Brooklyn, New York, around the turn of the century, talks about a Moorish community living adjacent to, quote unquote, a group of Negroes in Brooklyn in 1899. You see what I'm saying? So the prophet coming with that, it's just like this, brother. Follow me. It's just like people saying, well, you know what? There were 16 world crucified saviors before Jesus. Therefore, they plagiarized. There was no Jesus. They plagiarized that story. No. The fact that you can find that same pattern told in the story of Jesus, as you see told with Osiris, Zoroaster, etc., right? It actually validates the story of Jesus. Because what are we looking at? Not the person, you're looking at the pattern, the vine, the authentic tradition is what you're looking at. The authentic tradition is what you're looking at. So the fact that you can see the correlations means you can see the pattern. You can see the spiritual transmission. You see what I'm saying? Isn't this what we learned from Gematria? Okay. See?
Yes, sir.
So it's the same thing, you know, with the fact that there was a Moorish Zionist temple in 1924 on 127th Street, right? The fact that that was there is powerful because it means that that spirit, that vibration was in the land. You know what I mean? That it was important and significant that we tie ourselves back to our old world tradition.
And what's important about what you're saying, Brother Sharif, if I can jump in, is that not to be petty or not to be contentious, but it should be delineated and highlighted that the Moorish Science Temple is, you know, I'd be lying if I said one of. So I have to tell it as it is. It is the oldest, quote unquote, and I'm going to put this in quotes.
Yes.
Quote unquote, Black conscious movement in America. This is before you have anyone in America identifying as a Hebrew or an Israelite. This is before you have anyone in America identifying as Hotep.
Exactly.
And what this means is that with all of the contention that some of the various factions and groups may have, we should still be genuine enough to speak towards the honest transmission and evolution of how these groups come into existence. Because once you understand, to me, the origin story, you should almost be compelled to put respect on people. Because long before Dr. Ben was on, you know, Like It Is, telling people that the original peoples of ancient Kemet are of a much darker hue, this was already taught in the Moorish Science Temple.
Brother, it's the truth. It's the truth.
Long before Hebrew Israelites were saying that our people are from Canaan land and the original inhabitants of Canaan land, the Hebrews, are people of color, this was taught. on the Moorish Science Temple. See, I have no problem giving respect where it's due because I first say to myself, I must be true to the truth.
How about
A lot
that?
of people are not, brother.
How about
A lot
that,
of
brother?
people are not. A lot of
That's
people are
real.
not.
And to your point, I mentioned the community. I mentioned the community, and again, not to be contentious, but I mentioned the Moorish Hebrew community in Brooklyn at the turn of in the late 1800s. It's a fact. It was there. But it said, but even in the WPA report, it says it existed adjacent to a group of Negroes. So
Yes.
there was a distinction, right?
Yes.
So what you had there was a community, not necessarily a movement, but a community. Whereas Prophet Noble Drew Ali was like, listen, we got to get all of our people. You see, this is a divine and national movement. That was his whole thing. His whole thing was we have to restore the national identity to these people who have lost it. The only people in the history of humanity that you have to teach who they are.
That's right. That's right. You know, you gave a speech among us when you and I had that great lecture in
Yes,
Brooklyn
sir.
a couple of years ago,
Yes,
and
sir.
you spoke towards the psychological factor of nationality. You know, the psychological importance or even impetus of identifying with a correct and accurate nationality. I want, if you can, just before we have the conversation about the Fez, because I
Yes.
definitely want to have that conversation with you. I
Yes, sir.
want you to talk about the importance of nationality, and I also want you to give us a good working definition of nationality because when a lot of people speak of nationality, the definitions are horrible. So I
Yes,
want
sir.
you to differentiate for us what is nationality, what is ethnicity, what is culture, how do we marry the three?
Ooh, that's huge. So, a lot of us in the Moorish Science of America, and I'm being again transparent and just, you know, even critical about many of us in our organization and in the movement, right? And so there'll be a number of, I'm probably going to get a number of thumbs down for this statement, but I'm going to make it anyway. Many of us in our organization, totally miss the picture when we equate nationality with law and nationality with a legal position or legal status. We totally miss the boat when we do that. And so many of us, including myself, have done that for so long. You see? So I had to put that out there. That's very important because what you mentioned about identity and culture, right? Look at what's happening in Brooklyn right now with the drill culture, right? With the woos versus the chos. You know what I'm saying? And all this, man, it's crazy. You already know. You're right there
It
on ground
is.
zero. You
It
there.
is. And
You
it's
know?
from the last neighborhood in Brooklyn I lived in, which is Canarsie. I'm a
Yes.
Flatbush original head, but a
Yes,
lot
sir.
of people from Flatbush, when they get a little bit more money, we go to Canarsie with it.
Right.
And so I'm very familiar with that. And
Yes,
also
sir.
RIP to Pop Smoke.
Yeah.
Actually, have people that know Pop Smoke personally. RIP to that young brother.
Yes, sir. So, the condition of our people psychologically is, we got problems.
Yeah, we do.
So, we maintain, and Prophet Noble Drew Ali maintains, that the Negro problem, the basis of the Negro problem, isn't residual from slavery. It is identity crisis. Identity and purpose go hand in hand.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
Identity. So, I want to give one quick example of why identity and culture are so important. You remember this one, the sister, I haven't heard from her in a long time. Melanin Sutek.
Yes, I remember her. Beautiful sister. I
Right,
remember her.
right. Beautiful sister. So at one point she was like, early on she used to be like, yeah, that nationality stuff, y'all bugging out with that, right? So one day she called me, like angry and crying. And I said, what's going on? She said, listen, I got to talk to you more about this nationality thing. I said, why is that? She said, my daughter goes to an international school. I think you already see where I'm going with this. So
Yes,
my
sir.
daughter goes to an international school. I said, okay, cool. She goes, well, they had International Day.
Mm.
Okay, you see where this is going.
Mhm.
Where they all had to, do a little display, a little full-out display on the table. They had to wear an example of traditional clothing from their culture,
Mhm.
from their particular national culture. They had to do a presentation on their national identity. You see what I'm saying? They could even bring a dish. So all these children from all these different nations came with their parents as well. You already know the rest of the story. She's like, my daughter felt so out of place
Mm.
because the best we could do is red, black, and green,
Mm.
and that's you get it, and that's talking about a struggle in America.
That's right. That's not
That's not an
nationality.
old world connection.
Mm-mm.
And what made it even worse, Melanin Sutek said, was the reaction of the children, her friends. They're all friends.
That's right.
But
That
then
would
they
have been akin to someone on nationality or international day wearing a 9/11 memorial shirt.
thank you.
And this is
Thank you,
what we
bro.
don't get. The red, black,
Right.
and the green is a powerful flag, but it does not affirm nor identify us as a people.
See
And
that?
we are greater than our struggle. We are greater than
Thank you.
our falling and eventually trying to get back up. We are greater
We
than
are
all of that.
we are not our experience.
That's you said it right there,
You
brother.
know what I'm saying? And
Yes.
so she said the worst part to her was watching all of her daughter's friends look with this confused look and then try to speak to their parents about it. And the parents were like this. Chill, chill.
Mm.
You know? And she said, I felt so horrible for my daughter. I don't ever want her to go through that again. I need you to tell me about what we were before we were slaves, before slavery,
Right.
before we were called black, colored, etc.
That's right.
It was
That's
then when she saw what happened to her daughter that it made sense to her. Why
Mhm.
culture is so
It's
important.
so
So
important.
if the legal definition of nationality in Black's Law Dictionary says nationality determines one's political status, specifically with reference to allegiance.
Okay.
This is how various ethnicities can come together. This is how Calabrese, Sicilian, Neapolitan, how they all can get together and call themselves Italians.
Hmm.
See
That's
that?
right. That's right.
Okay. That's what we're talking about here. So nationality determines political status, not legal status. Political
Excellent.
status. So politics trumps the law. I'd rather be at the table talking with my fellow representatives about how the laws should be formed for the benefit of my community than in a court arguing the law after the fact in front of a judge.
That's a great point. Let me remind the family to do this, family. Again, if you're enjoying the conversation, family, you got to thumb up the video. That's how we bring attention on YouTube. That's how the YouTube algorithm works. More people will be able to see this video if we're thumbing up the video, liking the video, sharing the video. There's 98 people in here. There should at least be 98 likes, family. Everyone, please, if you can, thumb up the video, show your love, show your appreciation. If you also can, hit our Cash App, hit our PayPal, show your support for platforms that are bringing information as objective as possible, as genuine as possible, and with as great morale as possible. So with that being said, brother, I want to segue into looking at a particular book
Ooh,
for a
well,
moment.
that was mean right there, brother.
So this particular book is the Quran, or the Quran in Hebrew. And I'm actually not capping. If you look close, it's really the Quran
That's really
in
in
Hebrew.
Hebrew.
So just know that when Brother Zion Lexx opened his mouth to speak on something, it's
Yes, sir.
probably very informed.
Yes, sir.
Let me say this to you as a great segue showing that book now.
Yes, sir.
When we speak of the Moorish Science Temple,
Yes, sir.
one of the books, as it were, that people speak of association with the Moorish Science Temple is the Quran and the
Yes,
Circle
sir.
7 Quran.
Yes,
Could
sir.
you first define for us the Moorish view of the Quran and then explain to those who don't know what is the Circle 7 Quran?
The back on the in one of the major documents regarding the Moorish Science Symbol of America, right? The affidavit filed in 1928 in Cook County, Illinois. It says the Moorish Science Symbol of America, deriving its power and authority from the great Quran of Muhammad. Okay, so and it's speaking to and later in another in an actual public statement, the Prophet Noble Ali talks about the Quran of Muhammad, right, being what he called the Bible of the Mohammedans, with having more than I think he said 2 to 3 million readers worldwide, right? So our power and authority is a spiritual power and authority, right? Islam is a simple faith, right? It is, it recognizes man's duty to his creator, or the recognition that the creator is one. In Arabic, is Kul huwallahu ahad, right? Just like, hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one. It doesn't say one God, it says one. Totally different statement, right?
Okay.
Doesn't say one God as opposed to the other gods. It says the Lord, it says Allah is one. That's a totally different statement. But anyway, so the power and the authority of the organization comes from the fact of, one, we recognize, as spoken about in the Shahada, I bear witness that there is no God. There is only Allah. 2, I bear witness that in all the messengers, those or the prophets, those who gave me the knowledge that God is one. That is what a Muslim is, period. So the authority comes from the adoption and the absorption of monotheism in this respect.
Okay.
That's the authority. Now, what is the need? If that's the case, what is the need for this? Right? The need for this is this. It's actually spoken of in the Quran of Mecca. Surah 49, verse 13, ayat 13. Right? Surely we have created you, O man, from a single male and female, into nations and tribes, that you may know one another and not despise the other. So it's the mandate of heaven that God's children are divided into nations and tribes.
It's a great point. It's a great point.
You see? So we say this. What is the what is the everlasting gospel? Answer, it is a saving power that comes from Allah through our ancient fathers by his prophet. That right there sums up what we say is an actual Muslim. You see? Through our ancient fathers, meaning if you're not connected to a nation or a tribe, you cannot be said it cannot be said that you are recognized as part of the human family. Thus, you are cut off.
That's right. That's right.
And
That's absolutely right.
That is where spirituality touches nationality. You see? That's where they touch.
What's important that people should realize is that in your closing statement, you said that's where spirituality touches nationality.
Yes, sir.
Most people can't feasibly understand the connection between the two. But if you look at the ancient world, you'd understand the concept greater, because in the ancient world, what the ancestors taught was so ingrained in the people that the very religion or spiritual system became synonymous with the people itself. So when you think of Moabites, you think of their gods.
That's right.
When you think of the children of Israel, you think of who they worship. When you think of the peoples of ancient Kemet, you think about the various factions in their spiritual system.
That's
It's
right.
it's completely different than this new paradigm we're in the United States
Yes.
of America,
Yes, sir.
where we don't know what a person is because this is the melting pot not just of peoples but of ideas as well.
There you go. Brother, what you said is so big because what you just said, you just helped me answer the question you presented to me. What you described about the people being so connected to their spiritual practice, right? That it become, and then those things are known by other groups. They're known by other groups. Guess what that's called? That is the origin of culture itself.
Absolutely.
Your
Absolutely.
social practices are the reflection. I like how Tom Cruise said it in the movie The Last Samurai when he was observing and writing in his journal about the Japanese that he was amongst the samurai community. He said, their every act on a daily basis is a practice of spiritual perfection. Meaning he could see their devotion to their spiritual hierarchy in their everyday activities.
That's powerful, brother. That's powerful. I mean,
See?
this dialogue is so powerful for more reasons than one, but I also know I can't keep you too long. We're approaching the 2 o'clock hour within the next 30 minutes. So I want to make sure we get to some calls. But just
Yes,
before we get to some calls, I want to ask this question.
sure.
So we see the look of Moorish men
Yes,
to typically be the look where we see the fez.
yes, sir.
Normally we see the red fez.
Yes, sir.
But obviously, as we can see with you, there's also in black fez. Could
Yes,
you
sir.
explain to us the symbolic meaning of the red fez and possibly the origin, and the
Sure.
symbolic meaning of a black fez and possibly the origin? And in between that, talk to us about the direction that the tassel is in and what that means as well.
Okay, very cool. And I'll be as brief as possible. Quite simply, Prophet Noble Drew Ali returned the fez to us as a part of, to use the technical term, would be a tangible cultural hereditament. Cultural heritage. When we say proclaim your nationality, proclaim means to make known, meaning it's something you live. It's not something you file it as a piece of paperwork. It's something you live. You live it out, right? And so what we're really talking about is restoration of cultural heritage, restoration of culture. The culture is now you living your history in the present.
Yes, sir.
There you go. And so now so cultural heritage is a big deal in America because of America being the great melting pot. Cultural heritage is a huge thing. It's very big. So there's cultural heritage preservation, but it is up to the particular people who are in possession of the culture to preserve it and
That's
no
a fact. That's
right?
a fact.
So these things are precious things because they help to define the distinct characteristics of that people. Without the cultural distinctives, people can disappear.
I totally agree.
You see?
I totally agree.
So something as simple as me wearing this fez makes a huge statement in that respect because there's a history that comes with this. And my people are attached to that history. That's another big thing about Prophet Noble Drew Ali. The term Moors and the term Moorish Americans was around before him. But guess what? He was one of the few that pointed to our people and said that term is attached to you. It's attached to you. These people that say that you have no history outside. See, that term is attached to you, not just our people below the Rio Grande in what we call modern day Mexico, but attached to you. So the fez, right? We say very simply is the national and religious headdress of Moorish Americans. We know its origin, its name comes from the city of the origin. At that time, Fez was a kingdom because in that time period you had kingdoms, empires, city states, etc.
Yes.
Fez was a kingdom, but not just a kingdom, but a very important Islamic center as well, and a very important educational center as well. Hence, a derivative of this is the graduate cap from cap and gown.
That's powerful.
See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It represents highly cultured individuals.
Powerful. Very, very powerful. Thank you for that, brother. Very, very powerful. All right. If I can have some people call in, the call-in number is up there, family. Please call in those who have questions. I'm going to take some questions also from the chat room. One of the questions in the chat room is from Sister Sasha Newson. Shalom, Sister Sasha. I know you. She says, I came in late, but could you have him talk about the Moorish influence on the founding of America and maybe the significance of the 1790 Moor Sunday Act?
Okay. One of the things that you're very good at, brother, that I salute you for, right, is myth busting. So, we want to tell, and like you said, to be true to the truth. You know what I mean? To the point where you tell the truth on yourself, even if it's to your own detriment. You know what I'm saying? That's courage.
That's courage.
That's courage.
Totally.
So
Totally.
that I'm going to work backwards. I'm going to take her second part first, right? The Moor Sundry Act. It was not an act. Okay? You're talking about in South Carolina, 1790. It was not an act. It was an actual legislative record. In other words, it was minutes. It was a certain detail in the minutes of the proceedings in 1790. What you had was a group of individuals in South Carolina at that time who did not want to be identified as Negroes and therefore subject to the Negro Acts of South Carolina. Right? So they petitioned to the South Carolina legislature. It was a petition. They said, we are subjects of the Emperor of Morocco, the Sultan of Morocco. And because we are subjects of the Emperor of Morocco, we want a clarification of our legal status based on that fact, so that we do not fall victim to the Negro Acts. And that if we were to run afoul of the law, we would be tried by the laws of the state of North Carolina, like any other North Carolina or South Carolina citizen. That's what that was. So it wasn't an act. It wasn't a law. It was just a petition to the South Carolina legislature regarding these individuals' identification. That's what it was.
Okay, that's a great point. I see someone in the chat room wrote, and I'm going to mention the name, House of Dry Bones says, should Israelites establish themselves as a tribal organization?
Well, you're definitely asking me the wrong that's not necessarily a question for me, but this is one of the things I'll say in terms of history, right? And our brother Zion Lexx, I know he could chime in on this, right? There were, in the old world, medieval Spain, right? There were people that looked like me and people that looked like Zion Lexx in Spain. We ruled Spain for nearly 800 years, okay? There were people there that looked like me, myself, and Zion Lexx, right? That identified as Jews, Hebrews. And that's the fact, historical fact. There's tons of literature, even on the European side, that talk about in 1492, when we lost Spain at the fall of Granada, about the expulsion and forced conversion of our people that practiced Islam and practiced Judaism.
Teach.
That's just a fact.
Teach.
Now, what makes Islam significant in this fact is this, and this is what it is. When we talk about the Moroccan Empire, the Moorish Empire, right, in Western academia, that is synonymous with the Islamic Empire. Why do they say that? This is why. Outside of Egypt, ancient Egypt, the next world African power was the Moroccan Empire. And what was the commonality? Islam. And contrary to some belief, Islam was not forced upon Africans by pale Arabs. That's a myth. That's a myth. Get Julian Balding's book, Black God. Read
So you saying we shouldn't read Brother Polite's books?
Polite might need to have a conversation. Matter of fact, next time you bring me on, you got to bring him on too.
All right. We have a caller. I'm gonna take the call. Give me a moment. Caller, let me just pair you so everybody can hear you. Give me a second, caller.
Sure. While you doing that?
Yeah.
What I was saying about it was Islam that united Africa into a world power. This is the number one reason why in the West, in early America, they did not want Islam touching our people. That's why. They did not want our people connected to Islam because Islam united Africa. That's what it did. Like it or not, that's actual history. You see? The beginnings of the transatlantic slave trade and this is documented. Look up Professor Nazir Ahmed, Encyclopedia of Islamic History, the Atlantic slave trade. The fact of the matter is the African transatlantic slave trade began as a crusade against the Moorish Empire. Period.
Okay, excellent. We're going to take a call from one of the callers right now. Caller, can you hear me? Hold on. Let me make sure that you can hear. Caller, you're connected. Can you hear me? All right, let me try it this way. Caller, can you hear?
Yes, sir. I can hear you, Brother John.
All right, go ahead, brother.
Hey, I have a question for Sharif, baby.
What's up?
So, what is the difference between? I shouldn't say that. Is there a difference between a Moor and Moorish? You know, like Moorish, like the Irish, like the Hebrews try to say that it's the difference between a Jew and Jewish. I don't know if you understand my question.
I do. I understand exactly where he's going. Right?
Okay.
So if we take the suffix ish, right? Again, we have to, for sometimes for a lot of our people, context is a moving target, right? So one of the uses of the suffix ish means belonging to. Another usage of ish means somewhat like. See?
Right.
Okay. Another use of ish means of the. So if we're talking about a people, right? A people can't be yes and no at the same time. So you got Irish, you got British. British doesn't mean somewhat like Brits. You get it? Doesn't mean that. It means of Britain, of the British Empire, which brings up another thing that's very, very powerful. The British Empire doesn't exist anymore, and that was the last world empire. That was the last world empire. It's now called the United Kingdom. But guess what the people are called today? British, because they're what? Descendants of the British Empire and born in the UK. There you go. Our questionnaire, we say, why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America.
Right.
The empire doesn't have to exist anymore for us to still be descendants of it. See that? Just like nobody questions the fact that Brits or British people are descendants of the British Empire, even though the British Empire no longer exists. You see what I'm saying? So we say Moorish. Why? Because Moorish, really, if we're talking about the type of American, Moorish is a descriptor of the type of American we are, like Japanese American or German American. If I say just Japanese, then the presumption is you're not American, you're Japanese. Get it?
You have no affiliation, no tie.
But if I'm an American citizen, right? If I'm an American citizen. Remember, America is the melting pot, and to be accepted or not accepted, recognized socially, you have to be able to say where you're from. Bottom line, from that perspective, Civics 101, every American citizen has two flags. Flag of your origin, flag of your birth. See? And so that being said, we're descendants of Moroccans and born in America. Moorish Americans is describing the type of American I am.
All right, brother. Thank you very much for your question, brother.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And where you calling from, brother? Before you go, what's your name? Where you calling from?
I'm sorry. My name is LeBan. I'm calling out of Shreveport, Louisiana.
Woo! Yes, sir.
Peace, love, and power to you. To you. Thank you very much. All right, family. We're about to wrap it up soon, so get those questions geared for our brother Sharif Bey. This has been an amazing interview. I really
appreciate this, man. This is a long time coming, bro.
Long time coming. Long time. Just know that when me and this brother decide, by the grace of the Almighty, to touch the stage again together, it's going to be problems. It's going to be problems.
Listen,
a lot of people won't be able to scam anymore.
Brother, let me tell you something. I want to say this to your audience. First of all, let me tell you, we say steel sharpens steel.
Mm-hmm.
If the brother hits me up and says, listen, we're going to take the stage on such and such a day, bro, I'm going into the gym. I just got to let you all know. I got to go into the gym. I got to get my muscles up because, you all have, the Hebrew community has a jewel with you, brother. I'm telling you. And I'm not saying that to be patronizing. I'm just saying what it is. Sheesh, the amount of work you put in. Brother,
thank you.
Yeah, brother. We see it. And to speak selfishly, a lot of the work you put in benefits us. I just got to say it.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
Yes,
if only more of us could understand how viable one another's contributions are, the more of an impetus there might be to work together. Because even our brothers in the Kemetic conscious community have pieces and parts of the puzzle that can be used to help destroy another peg and remove another peg from white supremacy.
I promise you.
But because people are so ego-filled in the community, people are so self-centered in the community, there is no real desire or impetus to unite, but there's more so a desire to be known as Jet Li, the one.
Right.
That's the problem.
Like you just said, that's perfect. That was a perfect analogy, brother. They don't want to win. They either want one or two things. Well, what you're talking about, they don't want to win. They want to be the one.
That's right.
To claim victory, claim the victory.
That's right.
I don't care who it is. Man, I'm an aid and assist man. You know what I'm saying? I pass the ball, man, when it's time to pass the ball, bro.
That's right. We got another caller.
Yeah.
Caller, let us know your name and where you're calling from.
Hello?
Yeah, what's your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Tariq Bey. I'm calling from New Hampshire.
Peace to you, my brother Tariq Bey. Question.
My question is, can we get the Hebrews and the Moors, because it seems like we're the only ones that really understand nationality and the concept of it. It seems like, what will it take to unite both communities and get us to move on the same accord in regards to getting out of the caste system of black and white in the United States?
That's a great question, brother. I want to answer that honestly by saying we need more dialogue between the leaders of both communities.
There you go.
You have leaders in the Moorish Science Temple of America. You have leaders in the Hebrew community. You have some that function as teachers alone. You have some that function as teachers and leaders.
Yes.
In the community that I come from, I'm not a person that brags, but most people know me as a teacher in the conscious community, which translates in the Hebrew tradition as a moray. But I'm also a chief in the Hebrew community, which means a leader. That's my official title. When I'm introduced to speak among the Hebrew community, they call me Chief Avdiel, which is my Hebrew name. Avdiel. So if we have more dialogues with leaders in the community, I think that not only can your question be addressed, but I think that we can find resolution in your question.
There you go. And you know what? I can right off.
on the live bill.
Say that again?
I said we got a chief and a sheik on the live
On a
bill.
live bill.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So what I would say to that, on top of that, right, immediately following building those kinds of relationships that Brother Zion Lex just mentioned, is here it is. You know, I'm gonna speak in advertising, marketing, entertainment language. You got to make your way of life sexy. You understand? You know, it's not for us. This is legacy building. You know, it's legacy building. You know, celebrating January 8th, Prophet Noble Drew Ali's birthday, needs to be something that my children grow up with. You know what I'm saying? Like this is the new normal now. This is what we mean by proclaiming nationality. You mainstream your way of life. You mainstream your culture. What's mainstreamed right now about our people? Hatred, slander, lewdness, murders, theft, and everything that harms. That's what's mainstreamed. You see what I'm saying? We have to mainstream something new. And so the idea is you make, observing the Sabbath sexy. Like, this is the thing to do. You need to get with this.
Fact.
You see what I'm saying? That's what you do. And to that point, right? To that point, in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, the evening and the morning was the first day, right? In the Chinese community, in the Chinese calendar, the day starts at 12 noon.
Yes.
Day starts at 12 noon. So from that perspective, we say Friday's a holy day of rest. Because on Friday, the first man was formed in flesh. And on the Friday, the first man departed out of flesh and ascended to his Father God Allah. For that cause, Friday's a holy day for all Muslims all over the world. We celebrate our holy day at 7:30 p.m. Friday evening. That's during the Sabbath.
Powerful. And that's a fact. Because I live in New York and I see it.
Yes, sir.
Even my other greater Muslim community, when Friday night comes in, we see all our brothers observing Juma. From New York City to Philly, wherever we're at.
See that? So there's a commonality there that's really beautiful, but we have to develop the relationships.
That's right.
We have a saying, when we separate in the world, remember the relation that binds you to love and unity, and prefer not a stranger before thine own blood. So I thank you for your question, but that was a powerful question.
Let me ask one more question, if you brothers don't mind.
Okay, brother, go ahead.
So with the Brother Sharif.
Yes, sir.
Can you speak to the Hebrew Zionist Moorish temple and speak to how our brothers that are more aligned with Israel, because we're all the same people. It's just what resonates with you, right?
Yes.
So what can you speak to how they do not have to lose the Hebrew culture, the Israelite culture, by joining the Moorish movement? I'm not, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
those can coexist and have coexisted within each other. And I'm not a biblical scholar, but if I remember correctly, it says the nations of the world will work together not to recognize the Israelites.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, we are their wild brother Ishmael coming to help protect our brothers and work with our brothers and sisters.
I like that, brother. Let me just say this. You all are dealing with a major problem. When I say you all, I'm talking about brothers, in the Hebrew community. But yours, in this respect, it's huge, but it's also more prominent and more well known, and that is identity crisis. Or no, hold on, identity theft. You see what I'm saying? Identity theft. Yours is big. It's out there. You can see it, right? You're dealing with a major stolen legacy. But guess what? The Islamic side is also stolen legacy. You know what I'm saying? What we literally have here is a usurper that jacked the Abrahamic tradition from the Afro-Asiatic people. And when I say the usurper, let's keep it a buck. I'm not necessarily talking about specific people. I'm talking about an ideology. Let's take it high, people. I'm talking about an ideology. I'm talking about a spirit. I'm talking about a way of thinking, a worldview that has usurped the Abrahamic faiths and everything that comes with them from the people who founded it. That's what we're dealing with. Listen, people, this thing is really not about flesh and blood, but it ain't spooky either.
That's right.
It's not spooky. Listen, you all know consensus reality is real. You know, so if somebody thinks you're the enemy, if somebody thought that you raped their daughter, your life's in danger.
That's right.
Like that.
That's right.
Just like that. So the real war is spiritual, but it's for where? We're talking about a war of an ideological war, a propaganda war. You got the majority of the world saying that our people, all they've known about them is that they were dead. Isn't that what's said in Revelations? The lamb that looked as if it had been slain from the foundations of the earth. All we know about y'all in words is that y'all is dead.
Period.
Dead socially, dead economically, dead spiritually, dead. That's it. Y'all are just dead.
Dead.
So the mere fact that we're talking about identity and talking about restoring it, we're literally talking about resurrection work.
That's right. That's right. Thank you very much, brother, for your questions. Really appreciate you, brother.
For sure, man. Y'all brothers, all honest to y'all. Keep putting out that good information.
Yes, sir.
You brothers have my support.
All right, brother. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
All right. So, brother Sharif, it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. Look forward to many more dialogues with you.
Yes, sir.
To those that you would even introduce to the platform to help bring more interviews in this direction.
Absolutely.
And, from here, brother, it's smooth sailing, brother. We've always had a great relationship.
Yes, sir.
We continue to behave as brothers like we always do.
Absolutely.
Much respect to you, the Moorish Science Temple and the Moorish community, my Moorish brothers. Much respect to the Israelite community as well. Much respect to the conscious community, because we know y'all watching too.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And what I want to say in this instance is, if we are truly genuine about, first and foremost, the spiritual liberation of our minds,
right,
and the physical liberation of our body, and by body, I mean it in the Black Law Dictionary sense, because we are dead without the knowledge of self.
Facts. Facts.
Just like when you go to court and you have a lawyer represent you, you are no longer a human being. You are no longer a spiritual person. A lot of people don't realize that the moment a lawyer represents you in court, you're saying to the court that you're unfit. So what I'm also going to say in that same vein is that when you have a nationality other than your true nationality represents you, you are equally spiritually unfit.
Facts. That's fact.
And I want you to have the closing words, brother. This is your show. This is your honor. What would you like to close the show by saying to the listening audience?
To that point, brother, without identity, brother, you're lost in space, lost in time and lost in space. Very famous West African spiritual leader by the name of Malidoma Some, in a book that he wrote on ritual, right? On ritual. Shout out to my sister F. Brown Hill, Temple number 5, St. Louis, Missouri. She has this powerful poetry piece, brother. I got to bring on your show. She has this powerful poetry piece. It's amazing. Every time I hear it, I squirt a tear. I tell you.
I would love to.
But in it, she says routine and ritual. Routine and ritual, right? So it's that whole uniting of the physicality with the spiritual, right? Through using that hammer, pounding it until it's a part of every part. But Malidoma Some speaks about ritual, and he says ritual reminds us of our responsibilities to our ancestors. When we forget ritual, we are cut off from them and we are lost. We don't have that beam, you know, of light, of information that connects us to our path to where, like if you're in your old hood, you may have had scraps with people on the next stoop or whatever, but when you're in your hood, it can't happen to you. Nobody can touch you from any other hood.
That's right.
It can't happen to you. In other words, even when you by yourself, you're not by yourself.
You're not by yourself.
That's what nationality does for everybody.
That's a fact.
And it's a testament to our strength. We still here breathing and we ain't got it. Or not, we don't have knowledge of it.
That's a fact.
If it wasn't important, they wouldn't have robbed you of it.
That's a fact, brother. That's a fact. I want to say shalom to you. And I want to ask you,
hello, brother.
How can the family find you? How can we reach out to you?
Right on Facebook. You know, Sharif Anail Bey on Facebook, on Instagram, you know, Sharif Bey. I'm not hard to find. You can find me on my business website, kungfusyracuse.com. You can find me there as well.
Thank you very much, brother.
Yes, sir, brother. It's an honor. It's an honor.
Okay, brother. Peace, love, light, shalom.
Yes, sir. Shalom.
Take care.